Welcome to The Self-Led Woman. This is a podcast about emotional eating, the experiences that shape our relationships with food, and the path back to self-leadership. These conversations go beneath behaviour, held with deep respect for the wisdom of the body and the ways it learned to cope, adapt, and survive. And when we can peel back those layers and meet the parts of ourselves that need care, we begin to see that food was never the problem and we can return to who we really are. I'm your host, Megan Darnell. Let's dive right in. I want to talk today about something that I think gets oversimplified, and that's emotional eating. Because the way that it's usually talked about makes it sound like it's just one thing, or that there's one course or one solution. And quite frankly, that's BS. Food doesn't just play one role in our lives. It plays many roles. And when we just say something is just emotional eating and we're just throwing this blanket term over it, we're actually missing what's going on. So food can have many meanings, many uses. It can be nourishment, but it can also be regulation, relief, comfort, distraction, or neutrality. And sometimes food is just that, food. But the problem isn't that food plays roles for us. It's when food is being used as the only place that those needs get met. And this doesn't surprise me in a way because we are in a time where we're probably more disconnected than ever. And a lot of women that I work with get confused by their relationship with food. They might say things like, well, I actually eat really well. I take care of myself. I am getting the right nutrients. I know what my body needs. But then there's also this other side, this other part of us where food, the noise might feel really loud, or it might end with compulsive eating or just feeling very emotionally loaded. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. I speak to this all the time, but it's our bodies and our systems are so intelligent and they're just doing a job. But it means that there's something that's missing. And when I said earlier, food can be nourishment. Nourishment comes in so many different forms. Nourishment is not just about the nutrients and the macros we need to make a meal that's going to support us with our energy needs and what have you, and all the things that our body is designed to do. Nourishment is in forms of connection, in forms of safety. It's, what does my soul need? And from an IFS lens, from internal family systems, those different parts of us can use food differently. So you might have a soothing part or a comfort eating part that eats at nighttime when the day finally stops, when there's a moment for you to slow down, which you haven't had all day. And those parts might have learned when you were very young that food meant safety or closeness. The parts of you that might use food to numb out, there's feelings there that they've never had space before to be felt. And then there's also regulating parts of us that rely on food to bring the nervous system down when everything feels too much. And I certainly had regulating parts in the past that would do that because that was all they knew. None of these parts are bad. They're just adaptive. They've found something that works for you. And often they're found in environments where there weren't actually many options. And the really important distinction here is that not all eating that feels emotional is a problem and needs fixing. I mean, I don't like to use that word fixing anyway, because nothing needs fixing. It needs to be met. It needs to be understood. It needs to be cared for and met with attunement and compassion. Like, for example, sometimes you just want to have a hot chocolate because, say, it's winter and you want to feel warm and cozy. And you'll just have this hot chocolate. It'll be really nice and cozy and warming. You'll enjoy it and then you'll just move on. And that doesn't need analyzing at all. That's just food being food. That's nourishment in context, and not, like I said, nourishment comes in all forms. That's probably feeding more than just a consumption thing. Of course it is. But what tends to cause suffering is when food has to regulate everything, when it's the only part of your life where you get comfort, like, or relief, or just a place to rest, like for your shoulders to drop, for you to just forget about the millions of responsibilities on your plate for just a moment. And sometimes women try and remove food from that equation, or try and control food without actually adding anything else in, when food is the thing that's meeting your needs. That's like your one reliable source of regulation. And say, for example, it's a controlling part that's coming in and saying, well, let's just control this and not eat the things after dinner or go into some sort of emotional eating pattern. And that's why you can follow all of the plans and even understand intellectually why you emotionally eat. But then you unravel 22 days later. Because it's so much deeper than that. It's like you're taking away, if this has been your source of regulation or comfort, it's like taking that source away. When you remove a coping strategy, use your words, Megan, without offering those other things that you need, like safety, care, attunement to your system, or alternatives that will nourish you, like connection is such a big one, your system's going to find another way. This is exactly why having those plans and rules and strictness, or getting it right, or being good, even those words like being good, like that you can be bad, like, please. But it's like these things that we've been fed, no pun intended, that we take on, but they backfire. It works short term, and you might even feel empowered or like, yeah, I've got this under control. But it actually just increases tension in your body, like day by day, slowly, slowly, slowly. There's tension and there's a feeling of deprivation. And hey, you might not be deprived with food. Like, you might actually just be eating, a relatively balanced diet and getting the nutrients you need. But say, I don't know, your comfort is to go for chocolate or a dessert after dinner or whatever it is. It could be a glass of wine, whatever. And you take that away without adding other things in, it's going to make you feel deprived. And eventually what happens is another part steps in and says, I can't do this anymore. And in this realm of emotional eating and IFS, we call that a rebel part. Like, they just snap. And this is that, if you've experienced this, I'm not going to emotionally eat, I'm not going to eat dessert, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. And you might keep it up for 3 weeks, but slowly this tension in your system is building. You can feel it in your body. There's a sense of deprivation. There's a sense of wanting to just have a little something, a little relief. And when that rebel part comes in, because there's just too much, it's overwhelming, it says fuck it, and you end up like having a binge or eating something, and going much further than you wanted to with it. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. Your system's just being adaptive. It's just trying to restore some balance. And another thing here I want to touch on is neutrality. So when we have neutrality with food, the noise quietens. Sometimes it even goes away when we feel neutral with food. And I also want to say this. I thought for many, many, many years that I would never get to a place of food neutrality. And although I'm here now and I feel I don't have noise around food anymore, I eat what I want. I eat relatively healthy. I have chocolate. I have whatever I want whenever I want it. But I just don't feel the need to overindulge or to eat in a way that doesn't feel supportive to my body. Or, for me, if I ate too much sugar, I would almost wake up feeling like I had a hangover. I just don't do those things anymore. I have a little bit of chocolate and I move on. If I want to have a little bit more, I don't beat myself up for it. But it just feels like there's so much more space in my system. But hand on heart can tell you I'm actually meeting a lot more of my emotional needs and asking for support where I need it. But we can't think our way into this. Again, we can't intellectualize our way into this and say things like, oh, I just need to be food neutral, or I just need to eat what I need and leave the rest. This is something that emerges in its own time when your system feels safe. And when food isn't scarce, and you may be experiencing food scarcity, but in my world here in Australia, there's not really that around me in my circle, in my wider circles. But it could be that what feels like deprivation to you actually feels to your system like food scarcity. And when food doesn't feel scarce, when your nourishment is consistent. Now, if we think about when you're a child and you're getting your needs met, you're being attended to and attuned to by a safe adult, that creates like a secure attachment, right? Where you don't second guess things. When your nourishment is consistent, like not just food nourishment, emotional nourishment, physical nourishment. Are you getting enough rest? Do you have enough supportive connection in your life? Are you looking at your capacity in your life right now, and then what support do you need to put in place? Giving yourself permission for those things in the best way that you can meet those needs. When our needs are met in more than just one place of our life, that's when we can start that journey towards food neutrality. It's when you can just eat without bargaining. Now, bargaining is like tracking maybe your calories, tracking what you've eaten, tracking your morality, like calling foods good and bad is bargaining. Saying things like, oh, I went out for dinner and enjoyed myself last night, so I need to work out really hard today. Okay, how much have I eaten? Oh, I'll need to do a workout later. Oh, can I eat that cake? Did I work out hard enough this morning? Do I need to work out again later? Oh, I had cake this afternoon, so I need to have salad for dinner. It's this constant back and forth. This is food noise, this is bargaining, and it's going on in your mind all the time. When we have neutrality, it's like you eat, you enjoy it, you notice it, you move on. But for a lot of women who've been on this journey, it's like that might feel impossible to you right now, but that makes complete sense. When food has carried you for a long time, that makes complete sense. Your system is so adaptive and intelligent. It's just doing what it knows it knows that works, and so it's just continuing to do that. So rather than asking yourself, well, how do I stop emotionally eating? Start to ask yourself, what roles does food actually play for me? Notice when you actually you tend to emotionally eat. At what times of the day? At what times of the year? What does it actually give me in that moment? And what else might I need that I'm actually not getting? There's no right or wrong answer here. This is just for your own curiosity. But it's just information. But that information matters. This is you beginning to be attuned to your system. Emotional eating isn't just one thing or a pattern or a part. It's like a conversation happening inside your system. It's a loop. Another way I like to describe these loops that happen is, say, for example, you have patterns of emotionally eating or binging when you, I don't know, say at work, at the end of every quarter, you have a sprint where you have to do so much more work and you need to work extended hours. And say you're a parent as well, and your husband works really long hours, and a lot of the labor in the home falls on your shoulders as well. Plus, your work is requiring more of you. And then you say have less time for time with your friends. So you're not feeling supported in all areas. And there's been nothing else put in place to support you. Such as, I don't know, say you're trying to keep up with all of the things, including cooking, not just for yourself, but for your family. And during this period, you might have, I don't know, with all the extra work you're doing, you might have 15 hours less a week, 20 hours less a week, but you're still putting all this pressure on yourself. You have a lot less capacity. Put some support in place for yourself. If there's no one you can ask to support you in some way, maybe order in some meals or something. But that is another way that you can feel a little bit more held and supported. But say that's your pattern, you emotionally eat during that period of your life, and you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. But this is like a riverbed. So if you think about a riverbed, it's been developed over maybe hundreds of years. So whenever there's a storm or rain, a downpour, the riverbed trickles down the mountain, the water trickles down the mountain and then creates this riverbed. And it becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And over hundreds of years, this might be 20 feet deep or 20 meters deep. And you saying, I'm not going to emotionally eat anymore, when you've put no other support in place for yourself or done no work around this, it's like standing in front of the riverbed. It might be dry, but you stand in front of the riverbed and you just say to the water, don't flow here anymore. But that has been the system in place for decades, in the riverbed's case, hundreds of years, but you get my drift. But when we can work with the parts of us that are all contributing to this loop, because there's many parts that are contributing to it, we can explore each and every one of them with attunement, find out what it is that they each individually need, and start to give that to them and give them a new job. It's kind of like building in your own system a much more sophisticated stormwater drainage system. So rather than standing in front of the riverbed, and it might be fine to stand in front of the riverbed and say, well, I'm not going to emotionally eat anymore. But the moment you hit that end of quarter, very stressful sprint for a whole month, it's fine until there's a downpour, meaning less capacity, meaning a storm in your life, meaning stress. Life's gonna life, baby. It's just going to. You can't avoid that. You can't just plan your life or say, I'm just going to do things that support me during times when I have capacity. It's actually more important to dial up that support system for those stressful times. And this isn't about being calm all the time. This is about being able to ride the wave. But having worked with these parts in the system that are contributing to this, and you start to build a very sophisticated stormwater drainage system, you've got far more chance of implementing change into your life that is supportive. And that's not to say that you won't go back and use a riverbed, because, hey, there'll be downpours and you've got this great drainage system and it works really well. And I guess this analogy could be used for healing too, because sometimes people will go through a big period of healing and they're doing great, and then they might feel like they're regressing or going backwards. But I liken this, when we talk about the riverbed, to there's more stress in your life than a normal day. And although you've built this beautiful stormwater drainage system, and that's where the water is flowing now, sometimes there might be a massive downpour, a massive flood, where there's too much going in your life and it's just too overwhelming. And like a flood, for example, of course the riverbed's going to get used again. It's a system that works when there's too much water, too much stress. And like, to not shame yourself if you ever go backwards, but be like, okay, I'm going to have a little bit of self-compassion here. If I actually look at my life and be honest, there's a bit more going on and I have far less capacity, and I'm noticing food noise is much louder. And you might go back and emotionally eat, and you might not have done that for so long, but that's just the riverbed getting used because the water's got nowhere to go. It's like the capacity of the stormwater drainage system has met its capacity. So now we just need to go back, and that's okay. And part of moving through this emotional eating is, I have a 12-week program for women that want to work on emotional eating called Release and Reclaim. And we work through different parts in each of the 12 weeks. But the first part we start with is actually the inner critic. Because the inner critic is the thing that keeps you stuck in these patterns, because you say emotionally eat and then you beat yourself up. Your inner critic is telling you, why did you do that? You have no self-control, or whatever it wants to say to you. We work with that first because it keeps us stuck in these cycles of like controlling. And then it's like the controlling part that's like, I'm going to be really good, will trigger the rebel part of us that goes, fuck it, I'm eating a whole block of chocolate. Fuck it, I'm just going to eat bad for the whole weekend. Not that there's any such thing as eating good or bad. There's not. But it's like, this is what your parts will say. But we start with the inner critic because that starts to soften everything else in your system. And it's probably the most important piece in the journey. So just to know the complexity of what's going on in your system, that this is a conversation, a loop. And once we start listening to that, like each of these beautiful parts that are just doing a job, instead of fighting them, and that's what the inner critic is doing, is fighting, trying to fight what's going on. But everything starts to soften. You have more capacity internally to explore these things, to have more self-compassion, to honestly look at your life and go, where do I need more support? So in the next episode, we'll start pulling together how all of these threads connect and what it actually looks like to become more self-led in your relationship with food. This isn't about being perfect or being rigid, but with the beautiful care and attunement that your system knows. This podcast is for education and reflection only. It is not a substitute for therapy or healthcare. If this episode brought things up for you and you need support, please reach out to a trained therapy practitioner or health professional in your area. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode resonated, please follow or subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Megan Darnell Therapy. If you share the episode or want to let me know what landed for you, you're always welcome to message or tag me. I love hearing from you guys. Until next time, I'm Megan Darnell, and this is The Self-Led Woman.